Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today is Tuesday, October 9th, 2018. Today I'm going to recap yesterday's League Division Series games and look ahead to tonight's big Game 4 between the Red Sox and the Yankees. The Yankees are facing elimination. I'll go over Drew Brees' big night and the Saints' big win over the Redskins from last night. The NHL slate from yesterday. I'll go over the surprising firing of Suns general manager Ryan McDonough. I'll do my NFL power rankings and guess the lines for week number 6. Alright, last night, or I should say yesterday afternoon, the Astros defeated the Indians 11-3 to complete the sweep to advance to the ALCS. Colin McHugh gets the win, Trevor Bauer gets the loss. Give Houston credit, they really put this game away later in the game. I can't fault Terry Francona by any stretch of the imagination. He used his best guys, but they just didn't do the job. And I'm actually not going to defend Aaron Boone for what he did yesterday, but I'm defending Terry Francona, even though it was an elimination game, because you had to go to your best guys. Brad Hand, Cody Allen, Andrew Miller. Granted, Miller and Allen haven't been great this year. Adam Simber. But that's just reality. You have to go to your best guys in an elimination game. I give Terry Francona credit for that, but the issue is that they didn't have it. So that's where Terry Francona doesn't get blamed. The Indians actually got on the board first in the bottom of the third inning by a sacrifice fly by Michael Brantley. Top of the fifth, home run George Springer, 1-1. Bottom of the fifth, home run Francisco Lindor, 2-1 Indians. Top of the seventh, fielder's choice Jose Altuve ties up at 2 apiece. 2-run double by Marwin Gonzalez, 4-2 Astros. Top of the eighth, George Springer home run is second of the game, 5-2 Astros. RBI single, Marvin Gonzalez, 6-2 Astros. Alex Bregman scores on the wild pitch by Brad Hand, 7-2 Astros. 3-run home run Carlos Correa to put the game away at 10-2. Top of the ninth, RBI single Alex Bregman, 11-2. Bottom of the ninth, Edwin Encarnacion scores on a wild pitch by Will Harris to make it an 11-3 final. Indians, I have to be honest, that was a disappointing season for them because their division's just awful, and that's how their win total was sort of deceiving. And they kind of gave up late in the year because they knew they were going to be the 3 seed in the American League. And some of their things didn't work out for them. Like Andrew Miller, let's face it, past his prime. Cody Allen, in a contract year, but I think he might be past his prime too. He hasn't been the same for a couple years now. Brad Hand and Adam Simber were good trade acquisitions at the time, but that's going to turn out to be an awful trade if Francisco Mejia turns into a superstar. It's going to be the equivalent of Gleyber Torres with the Yankees if Torres makes that leap next season for New York, or even in the playoffs this year if they get by the Red Sox and whatnot. And this team, by any stretch, I can say that their window's still open. Because it is, and Francisco Lindor's still around, but he's going to get more expensive as the years gone on. I'm going to say next year's the end of their window. That Brad Hand, Adam Simber trade, I'd still give them credit for doing it, even though they gave up a big asset in Mejia to get it done. Those two guys are still around next year. They have to revamp that bullpen next year, maybe go after like a David Robertson. I wonder if Craig Kimbrell's a free agent this fall. It's either this fall or next fall where Craig Kimbrell's a free agent. And their offense is solid, but my observations is that Francisco Lindor is obviously their all-around best player, and I don't think it's close. Jose Ramirez, to me, I think the success he had the most of this year and last year might have been a fluke. I'll get into somebody similar from a pitching standpoint, but there's a difference because the pitcher that I'm going to talk about in a couple minutes is still young and he has upside. And Jose Ramirez was kind of a role player that became a superstar because of 2 great regular seasons. And he showed some flashes in the World Series in 2016 as well. So I wonder if Jose Ramirez might have been a fluke and he's reverting back to what he really is, which is a mediocre role player, or an overqualified role player, whatever we want to say. Astros, meanwhile, congratulations to them. ALCS for the second straight year. They have to feel good about themselves. I think they have a real chance to repeat as world champions, although the Yankee-Red Sox winner won't be easy, and neither will the Dodger-Brewer winner. So, the Astros, it won't be easy for them to repeat, but I think that they have a fantastic chance to do so. Carlos Correa is back. He hit a big home run the other day. Jose Altuve's a stud. George Springer might be the best postseason player right now in terms of experience and big hits and whatnot in last year's World Series as well. So a lot is going right for them. Their bullpen's been improved. I was the one that defended the acquisition of Roberto Osuna at the trade deadline. I said he was an upgrade over Ken Giles, and I've been proven right. And I think I'll continue to be proven right with the Osuna deal. But if anything is their downfall, any possible injury or unexpected slump, or if they have a big bullpen meltdown, or if Justin Verlander or any of their elite starting pitching has a bad game unexpectedly, I mean, I don't see how this team doesn't at least make it back to the World Series at this point. But who knows? It can change within the next couple days with any random injury or decision making I make when I do my pick for the LCS between Houston and whoever comes out of the Boston-New York thing. All right. Before I get to Boston, New York, I want to discuss the other NLDS series that ended on last night. The Dodgers defeat the Braves 6-2 to move on to the LCS. Congratulations to the Dodgers. Third straight NLCS. Dave Roberts, I think, deserves a pat on the back. This Dodgers team was dead at 16-26. Not really dead, but a lot of people proclaimed them dead. And they turned their season around. They won their division, courtesy of a tiebreaker game over the Rockies. They get by the Braves in 4, and here they are facing the red-hot Milwaukee Brewers in the NLCS, which is going to be a phenomenal series. I'm going to pick that series on Friday's podcast. But the Dodgers deserve so much credit. They deserve credit for going out to get Manny Machado at the trade deadline, who's been awesome in the postseason. Hit a big home run in the game yesterday, and hit a couple other big home runs and get some big hits for the Dodgers in the playoffs as well. Congratulations to the Braves, too. Phenomenal season. Won the NL East. Brian Snitker deserves the Manager of the Year award for helping the Braves to this NL East title. I know the naysayers are going to say they took advantage of the underachieving Nationals and the underachieving Mets and the Phillies falling apart at the end of the season. But give the Braves credit. They did take advantage of all of that, and they really won't be going away anytime soon. They should be good again next year. I don't know if they'll win the division again because I expect improvement from the Phillies in free agency and whatnot. And who knows if the Nationals bring back Bryce Harper, they should be a contender again. And if the Mets don't blow it up and rebuild, that might be a surprise contender in the National League East again. The Marlins are certainly not going to be good anytime soon, but congratulations to the Braves. Phenomenal year. Brian Snitker, like I said, I think it'd be a disappointment if he didn't win the National League Manager of the Year, because the perception out there is that the Dodgers and the Cubs had disappointing regular seasons. And I certainly wouldn't give it to Joe Madden, especially after how they lost that wild card game and they lost the game 163. And I'm honestly surprised that he's back as manager, but it's because of the money and the Cubs won't admit it. And the Dodgers think that it took them to game 163 to win the division, but you got to give the Rockies credit for giving them a run, and the Diamondbacks to some extent through the season. And then it would be down to Craig Counsell or Brian Snitker for the National League Manager of the Year. Gabe Kapler was in the conversation until the Phillies fell apart. And then my case against Counsell is that the Brewers were supposed to be good anyway. You went out and got who's going to be the National League MVP in Christian Yelich, and Lorenzo Cain to help improve your team. And then the Cardinals, Mike Shildt, who took over for Mike Matheny midseason, they didn't make the playoffs, so Shildt doesn't deserve that award either. So, you gotta give it to Snicker. He was phenomenal. And the game last night, by the way, Ryan Madsen with the win, Johnny Venters with the loss. Dodgers got going early in the top of the first, RBI double, Manny Machado, 1-0 Dodgers. Bottom of the fourth, with the bases loaded, Kurt Suzuki rips an RBI single. Oh, I'm sorry, might have been second and third and 2 outs. Rips an RBI single that drove in two to give the Braves a 2-1 lead. Sure enough, that'd be the last lead they'd have throughout the season. Top of the sixth, 2-run single. David Freese, who's been a phenomenal postseason performer in his career. 3-2 Dodgers. Top of the seventh, the exclamation point of the series, the 3-run shot by Manny Machado. 6-2 Dodgers was your ball game final. Dodgers are off to the NLCS. And off-season review for the Braves real quick. I discussed chances they repeat as division champions. I think it's sort of a long shot with the expected improvement from the Phillies and potentially the Nationals if they keep Bryce Harper. But even if they don't keep Bryce Harper, Juan Soto, Victor Robles in-house, you still have Anthony Rendon, you still have Trey Turner, still have Max Scherzer. But if Harper leaves, they could just blow it up. Like, Max Scherzer could be traded, Anthony Rendon, Trey Turner. Like, some of these guys could be traded if Bryce Harper leaves and they decide to build around Juan Soto and Victor Robles and start from scratch. That's also an option for the Nationals. But back to the Braves themselves. Before the season, I actually predicted that Brian Snitker would get fired because I thought that the Braves would think that they're better than they really are and then blame the manager. Then the perfect parallel this year would be the Twins with Paul Molitor, how they fired him because they thought they were going to be better than what they were. That's what I really thought about the Braves, but Snitker's obviously not going anywhere. Freddie Freeman's a stud. He's not going anywhere. Ronald Acuna Jr. is going to win the National League Rookie of the Year. That guy's going to be a special player in the league. Nick Markakis has been a phenomenal veteran pickup for them. I wonder if he's in a contract here. He might be. But if he is, you got to try to bring him back. You have to upgrade third base because I think Johan Camargo was a fluke. You got to upgrade there. Whether you go out and sign Manny Machado, Mike Moustakas, you got to upgrade at third base. Ozzie Albies is really good. He just fell apart in the second half of the season. Dansby Swanson was missed in the first round due to an injury, and I think that he'll improve, although he's not been the player that the Braves thought they were getting in that Shelby Miller deal, so there's a lot of bust perceptions out there for Dansby Swanson. And you can make a case that they should upgrade at catcher, but Kurt Suzuki's been a good veteran for them, and Tyler Flowers has actually been a good veteran for them too. They have a lot of leaders on that team, and I really appreciate that. So, going to be an interesting offseason in Atlanta. And the other thing is that they have to improve that bullpen, because that bullpen fell apart at the end of last season. All right, the last game of the night, the Red Sox absolutely demolished the Yankees 16-1. Nathan Eovaldi the win, Luis Severino the loss. I'll go through all the scoring, and then I'll give you my thoughts on the debacle that was with the Yankees last night. Top of the second, infield single, Christian Vasquez, 1-0 Red Sox. That was courtesy of the wet field ground. Top of the third, JD Martinez sacrificed fly, 2-0 Sox. Fielder's choice, Rafael Devers, 3-0 Sox. Top of the fourth is when this game got away from the Yankees. Bases loaded walk, Mookie Betts, 4-0 Sox. 3-run double, Andrew Benintendi, 7-0 Sox. RBI single, Steve Pearce, 8-0 Sox. 2-run triple, Brock Holt, 10-0 Sox. Bottom of the fourth, fielder's choice, Didi Gregorius, 10-1. Top of the seventh, JD Martinez, RBI single, 11-1. Top of the eighth, more runs. Ground rule double, Brock Holt, 12-1. Wild pitch by Stephen Tarpley scores an Ian Kinsler. Well, that was probably a pass ball that they decided to call a wild pitch because Gary Sanchez can't catch. 13-1 Red Sox. RBI single, Mookie Betts, 14-1. Top of the ninth. For the cycle, the first cycle in postseason history, home run, Brock Holt, 16-1 Boston was your final. I'm going to talk about Boston first, and then I'll rip the Yankees. Boston, I really that was a good win. They can wrap the series up tonight. Alex Cora made some lineup changes. It paid off by going with Steve Pearce, Brock Holt, and Christian Vasquez, and Rafael Devers instead of Nunez, and Nunez stinks defensively, and he's a zero offensively too. Mitch Moreland, who I like, and then they started Brock Holt instead of Ian Kinsler at second base. That proved to be a fantastic move, and Christian Vasquez behind the plate instead of Sandy Leon. I don't think Leon's been very good behind the plate for the Red Sox at all. So, those lineup changes paid off for Boston. Nathan Eovaldi pitched well, but my take is that there was no pressure really on Eovaldi because the Red Sox got off to such a big lead, then the Yankee hitters just quit. Like, I can't really buy into this Eovaldi thing. I mean, he's owned the Yankees this season from his days with the Red Sox and even Tampa Bay to some degree. But I'm not buying it, this Eovaldi thing. The Yankee quitters quit when they were down 10-0 because they knew they weren't coming back. And now I'm going to get into the debacle that was Luis Severino, who was terrible last night, courtesy of not starting his warm-ups in time. Bad karma sometimes leads to bad results, and that's exactly what happened. Aaron Boone stuck with him an inning or two too long. They should have went to Chad Green in the fourth inning. Maybe it's a different game, but Chad Green wasn't very good either. His stat line, I'm going to pull it up right now. An inning and 2/3, 2 hits, an earned run, 2 walks, and no strikeouts. But some of those runs that he gave up, I believe it was the Benintendi hit, but some of those earned runs were Lance Lynn's, not Chad Green's. So, maybe the stat line, that's not probably how I should judge Chad Green by the stat line, but I don't think he was that good either. But yeah, bad karma comes back to bite you in the ass, and the Yankees deserve to lose that game. And I expect Aaron Boone to get loud boos from the Yankee Stadium crowd, similar to Joe Girardi last year in Game 3 against the Indians after he botched the non-challenge thing in Game 2 that would have lost them that series if they didn't come back. If the Yankees don't come back and win this series, remember, it was last night that cost them the series, potentially. Not saying that they would have won last night if this didn't happen. Maybe this game is like a 4-1 Red Sox win, and let's just say maybe Eovaldi pitches well, but then you don't know that because that Boston bullpen is a debacle, especially in close games, and they can't hold a lead, and that proved in Game 1. And the Yankees should have won Game 1. And that bullpen is so bad, that's why I'm not by any stretch calling this series over. And you know what? And then tonight you have Game 4. I'm just going to get into Game 4 right now. 8 o'clock TBS, Brian Anderson and Ron Darling on the call, Rick Porcello and CC Sabathia. I think the Yankees are making a mistake in going to Sabathia. I would start J. Happ on short rest. But at the same time, Happ wasn't good in Game 1, so it makes sense for the Yankees to do something different. Sabathia, he will be on a short leash. I think Aaron Boone learned his lesson. But in fairness to the Yankees, this wasn't an elimination game. Last night wasn't an elimination game. And the Cleveland thing was an elimination game. And I really think that the Yankees are going to come out with energy. They know their season's on the line. They'll play the way they did in that wild card game. They're facing a ton of pressure in that wild card game. This pressure's even more on them tonight. So, I think the Yankees find the way to win. I'm going to say Sabathia pitches okay. Then they go right to the bullpen. But what stinks for the Yankees is that Chad Green's unavailable. But Chad Green wasn't even used in the wild card game either. So something's got to give. I'm going to say Betances comes in and does the job. Betances has been lights out in the playoffs. He gave up a garbage run in the Red Sox game too, but that game was over, and the Red Sox weren't coming back in game two, so I can't really blame Betances for giving up a garbage run in game two. But he's been lights out in the playoffs. David Robertson was lights out in the wild card game. Zach Britton gave up the homer in the wild card game, but that game was in the books for the Yankees too. He was awesome in game two and in game one in Fenway Park the other day. And then Aroldis Chapman did the job in game two to close out the Yankees win in Fenway. I like the Yankees tonight. I think it could be a high-scoring game. I don't trust Rick Porcello away from Fenway Park. I feel like he's only good in Fenway Park and he's bad on the road. But I don't think he'll be bad. I think he'll be okay, just like CeCe. I think both of the starters will be okay. Both of them love short leashes. And I think the Yankees will find the way to win. Let's say a 6-5, 6-4. Boston will do everything it could to close it out tonight. Yankee Stadium crowd will be too much. I'm going to take the Yankees tonight to save their season and force a Game 5 back in Fenway Park Thursday night. NFL. A historic night for Drew Brees as he passes Peyton Manning to become the all-time passing leader in NFL history. What a great moment for Drew Brees. The Saints are 43-19 winners over the Redskins. The Saints seem to have turned the corner. And Brees, 26 of 29, 363 yards, 3 touchdowns. Alex Smith was a debacle. 23 of 39, 275 yards and a pick. I mean, that's what happens with Alex Smith. He's going to have his bad days and he's going to have his good days. And the next record for Drew Brees to break is the touchdown passes record, which I do think he'll break. He'll break that Peyton Manning record too. And it always seems like Drew Brees breaks records in primetime games. Like I mentioned on yesterday's podcast that he broke the all-time single-season passing record on Monday Night Football against the Falcons. And it was a pass to Darren Sproles, I believe, that got him the record. He threw his 500th career touchdown pass recently, too, but that wasn't a primetime game. His 400th career touchdown pass came in an overtime win at home against the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. And I believe he got another record on Sunday Night Football. It was a Johnny Unitas record against his former team in the Chargers. And then I mentioned the single-season passing yards record, too. So, what a great moment for Brees. And he really is a surefire Hall of Famer. He's very underappreciated. I think that's because the Saints had some down years within the last couple years. Don't forget there was a 3-year window where the Saints were mediocre and didn't make the playoffs. Them and the Panthers are going to be in a good battle for that division this year. As the Saints improve to 4-1 and Washington drops to 2-2. And the NFC East is so bad. The team that played the best in Week 6 from the NFC East, let's face it was the Giants, who have the worst record in the NFC East at 1-4. They're probably the worst team in the NFC East at 1-4. But they played the best, and they hung around with one of the better teams in the league in Carolina. And Washington wasn't even competitive with the Saints, and a lot of people thought that Washington was going to be competitive with the Saints in this game. And speaking of Washington, Josh Norman was benched in this game. And Norman's been a bust for the Redskins. He had one good season and cashed in on a contract year. And give Norman credit. And he's obviously going to go down as known as the guy that started drama with Odell Beckham Jr. in 2015 as well. I'll do my power rankings in a little while. Now I want to get to hockey. There's only 4 games played yesterday in the NHL. 3-day games and a night game. The Bruins defeat the Senators 6-3. You have to give the Bruins credit for bouncing back after that terrible loss to Washington to open up the season. They're now 2-1. Ottawa's 1-1-1. Patrice Bergeron gets the hat trick, and he was the number 1 star of the game. He also had an assist. David Pastrnak, 2 goals and assists, the number 2 star. And then the number 3 star of the game was Ryan Zingle with 2 goals for Ottawa. The Islanders defeated the Sharks 4-0. As the Islanders improved to 2-1, San Jose's 1-2. Robin Leonard with the shutout, 35 saves. That's the number 1 star. Number 2 star was Anders Lee with the goal, and number 3 star was Matt Martin with the goal. The Sabres defeat the Golden Knights 4-2. Good win for the Buffalo Sabres. They're 2-1. Vegas is 1-2. Number 1 star of the game was Jack Eichel with 2 goals. Carter Hutton was number 2 star of the game, 35 saves. He's off to a good start. Had a good game against Vegas yesterday, and then a good game against the Rangers on Saturday. Wasn't great against the Bruins, but the Bruins, that was a game that they had to bounce back and recover from. So that's that. And Jonathan Marchessault had a goal and assist as the number 3 star of the game for Vegas. The Ducks defeated the Red Wings 3-2 in a shootout. Anaheim's 3-0. Detroit's 0-1-2. Hampus Lindholm, number 1 star of the game with a goal. Jacob Silverberg was number 2 star of the game with a goal. Jimmy Howard was number 3 star of the game with 25 saves. He deserves credit for keeping Detroit in the game. Tonight's slate, you have the Sharks and the Flyers, 7 o'clock on NBC Sportsnet. I'm going to pick the NBCSN games and the big NBC games throughout the year, and I like the Flyers here at home to improve to 2-1 and send the team I picked, the Stanley Cup, down the 1-3, which wouldn't be great, but it's early in the season, and they're on the East Coast, so that's okay. I mean, it's early, too early to overreact to teams with bad starts, unless they're a rebuilding club, like maybe the Rangers or somebody like that. Canucks and the Hurricanes, you have the Canucks at 1-1, Hurricanes at 2-1, then you have the Avalanche and the Blue Jackets. The Avs are 2-0, the Blue Jackets are 1-0. 8 o'clock, you have the Flames and the Predators. The Flames are 1-1. The Preds are 2-0. The Kings and the Jets. Kings 1-0-1. The Jets are 1-1. And then the Maple Leafs and the Stars at 8:30. The Maple Leafs are 2-1, and then the Stars are 2-0. So a nice slate tonight. A couple contenders like the Sharks and the Flyers going head-to-head. You got a rebuilding team in the Canucks, and then the team that's on the rise in the Hurricanes. And then you have the Avs and the Blue Jackets, 2 teams that think that they're playoff teams. I think both these teams are playoff teams too. You have the Flames and the Predators. The Flames are trying to improve. Preds are a contender. Kings and the Jets is a nice one. In Winnipeg, the Jets are obviously a contender. The Kings, I think they're headed down on the downside. And then the Maple Leafs and the Stars is a really good game from Dallas. The Stars are thought out to be an improved team. I think they are too, but I didn't have them in the playoffs before the season because of the depth of the Western Conference. And then the Maple Leafs are a team that's interesting right now, and they're obviously a contender too. They're 2-1, but they have the William Nylander situation to take care of, whether that is to pay him or trade him. And hey, if this Maple Leafs offense is continuing to thrive without him, they could trade him for a defenseman, which would be something. But who's the defenseman they're trading for? They probably should have went out and gotten Ryan McDonagh last year from the Rangers, and the Rangers would have gladly taken William Nylander back in the trade. But I can't figure out who that defenseman is that's on the block. Maybe they could have done it for Erik Karlsson, but no, they decided not to do that either. So we'll see what defenseman's out there that Nylander can be involved in the possible package with. They could have went out and gotten Dougie Hamilton. And the Flames could have easily taken Nylander on their hands. That would have been a nice one. Or maybe the Elias Lindholm and the package that the Flames got back for Dougie Hamilton. Noah Hannafin and Elias Lindholm for Nylander could have been interesting too. So that's a storyline to keep following around the league. And then obviously the Columbus duo is obviously on the trade block too. but they'll be off the trade block if Columbus continues to win and solidifies themselves as a playoff contender. The Phoenix Suns surprisingly fired general manager Ryan McDonough yesterday after, I believe it was 5 seasons with the team. My question for the Suns is if you were going to do this, why didn't you do this in April or May? Why'd you wait 2 weeks before the season to do that? McDonough's done some good things and done some bad things as well. I think he botched a couple picks. He botched Alex Len. He botched Marquise Chris and Dragon Bender. He obviously hit it with Ayton, I think. And he hit with Devin Booker. He's missed on a couple free agent signings like Tyson Chandler. And who knows, maybe Ariza could end up being a hit or a miss depending on how their season goes. And obviously depending on how he plays. So, that's going to be interesting. We'll see where the Suns go from here. There's talks that Kevin McHale could be in play for this job. Which, I don't know if I'd love because he was not a good general manager with the Minnesota Timberwolves. I don't think they got enough for Kevin Garnett at the time. And he obviously missed on a couple draft picks as well. He was a good coach with the Houston Rockets, but the Rockets fired him because they underachieved under his watch. So I don't know if I'd love a possible Kevin McHale hiring. Now I'm going to do my power rankings for the week. Go from 32 to 1 as I do each and every week for football. Tomorrow I'm actually going to do hockey power rankings, for those of you wondering. Number 32 is the San Francisco 49ers. I think without Jimmy Garoppolo, this is the worst team in football. That's all you need to know. 31 is the Buffalo Bills. How the hell are they 2-3? That is a question for another day. Their offense stinks. I think they took advantage of the Titans that didn't, or I should say did take the Bills for granted, so they're still the second worst. 30 is the 2-2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That 2-0 is a complete aberration. This team is a mess. 29 is the Arizona Cardinals. They showed improvement last week with Josh Rosen at quarterback. Number 28 is the Miami Dolphins. Another fraud team that is similar to the Bucs. They're just awful. Number 27 is the New York Giants, who probably should have won last week against the Panthers, but didn't, courtesy of the refs. But they're 1-4, and they're not a good football team. That's just the reality of the situation. 26 is the Oakland Raiders. They had their worst game of the year against the Chargers last week. 25 is the Indianapolis Colts. Too many injuries right now, or maybe they have a better fate. 24 is the Atlanta Falcons. 1-4. They're in a lot of trouble right now as they host the Bucs this week. Number 23 is the Dallas Cowboys. They're 2-3 with a terrible offense and a defense that exceeds expectations without its best defensive player in Sean Lee. That's credit to Rod Marinelli, who's actually a pretty solid coordinator. But Jason Garrett is probably the worst coach in the NFL now that Ben McAdoo's no longer coaching in the NFL. And Scott Linehan's not a good offensive coordinator either. Dak Prescott just made him look good a couple years ago. And obviously Tony Romo did when Tony Romo was playing for him. Number 22 Houston Texans. They're at 2-3. They can salvage their season a little bit with the win against the Bills on Sunday to even it up at 3-3. Bill O'Brien's certainly a coach that's in trouble. How they lost to the Giants is dumbfounding to me. That's just going to go down as one of the more bizarre results of this year. Just like how the heck did the Bucs beat the Saints in week 1 and how the heck did the Bucs beat the Eagles in week 2. Number 21 is the Tennessee Titans. I think this is probably the most overrated team in the league. They ignored the Bills like Minnesota did a couple weeks ago. They probably won't make the playoffs, although I could be wrong. The AFC South is weak. Number 20 is the Denver Broncos. Boy, did that team regress from week 1. It's a team that you can make a case should be 0-5 instead of 2-3. They barely beat the Seahawks in week 1. They barely beat the Raiders in week 2. But then again, they probably should have beaten the Chiefs. They did not look good against the Ravens or the Jets because you know my theory about West Coast teams coming east, and that usually doesn't bode well. And speaking of the Jets, they're number 19. They've been a little Jekyll and Hyde. They look good against the Lions and the Broncos and were terrible against the Jags and the Dolphins. And they were terrible against the Browns a little bit as well. Although they probably could have beaten the Browns, but playing Baker Mayfield really changed that game. Number 18 is the Green Bay Packers. This is probably the most overrated team in the league. Either them or the Giants. But I'm giving Green Bay the nod only because people pegged this team to win the Super Bowl and nobody pegged the Giants to win the Super Bowl. That's what it comes down to. Aaron Rodgers is looking better, but they're dealing with some injuries right now. There's a chance that this team finishes last in their division. I'll get to the other 3 teams in their division in a minute. Number 17 is the Redskins. This is another Jekyll and Hyde team. They look good in weeks 1 and 3, and they look bad in weeks 2 and 5. Who's the real Washington Redskins? Their last 12 games will determine that. Number 16 is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Huge win against Atlanta. That was their best performance of the season. Their defense actually played well. Their offense put up a ton of points. Le'Veon Bell's coming back in week 7. I don't think he'll be traded. I think that this team is in a good place a little bit. We'll see how they do against the Bengals, but that's not going to be easy. But they had the win last week because of that Bengals game moving. Number 15 is the Baltimore Ravens. Bad loss in Cleveland. This is still a good team. They have a good defense. It's just that Joe Flacco can either hold them back or be a difference maker. He's their X factor to me. Number 14 is the Cleveland Browns. They're 2-1, folks. Probably should be 3-2. Could very well be 5-0. You can make a case that the Browns should be anything, but here they are, 2-1. And they probably would have a better record if Hugh Jackson wasn't their coach. Number 13 is the Philadelphia Eagles. They're just a mess right now, but it's mainly because of injuries. Jay Ajayi might be out for the year. There's talks that they might trade for LaShawn McCoy now. It just stinks that the Eagles, in the year where they're the reigning Super Bowl champs, are dealing with so many injuries. I think that's the biggest reason why, that they're 2-3. They have an interesting game on Thursday night against the Giants, which I'll pick on Thursday's podcast, obviously. Number 12 is the Seattle Seahawks. They are 2-3, but they should have beaten the Rams last week. This is probably a better team than I've given credit for. Their offensive line actually played well, or was it the case that the Rams looked past them? We'll find out within the next couple weeks who are the real Seattle Seahawks. Number 11 is the Detroit Lions, who are vastly improved from week 1. I pretty much thought that this was going to be a long year for Detroit, especially after how they lost week 1. But give them credit. They really have turned it around. They're 2-3, but it's a decisive 2-3. They probably should be 4-1 because they should have beaten the 49ers and they should have beaten Dallas. But that just shows me that I just don't think Matt Patricia is a good football coach. Number 10 is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tough loss in Kansas City. It's hard to win in Arrowhead Stadium, especially when Blake Bortles is your quarterback. He's just not very good. And I said that repeatedly. They need Leonard Fournette back. But the reality is that Bortles is probably holding them back. Number 9 is the Los Angeles Chargers. They are now 3-2. This was probably the team that people have as kind of an underachiever for the first couple weeks of the season, but reality is that their 2 losses are against the 2 best teams in the league. But I still don't trust Anthony Lynn. They almost lost to the 49ers, so I could see why people think that they're an underachieving 3-2. Number 8 is the Minnesota Vikings. Excellent bounce-back win in Philadelphia against the Eagles to get to 2-1 after a rough loss in LA against the Rams and that terrible home loss against the Bills. Dalvin Cooks should be back soon. But this defense needs Everson Griffin back if they are to be a Super Bowl contender. Number 7 is the Chicago Bears. They might be the favorites to win the division right now. But my big fear is that Mitch Trubisky could hold them back, kind of like how Bortles is holding back the Jaguars. My big fear is that he's Blake Bortles 2.0. But they had the 6-touchdown performance, but I think that's more about the Bucs than it is about the Bears. Although the Bears' offense has improved, I'll give them that, but I'm just not sold on Trubisky, and he could be the reason why they don't win the division. But Minnesota, like I said, does need Everson Griffin and Dalvin Cook back, and Green Bay needs the receivers back, and I don't trust Matt Patricia. So that division's wide open. Number 6 is the Cincinnati Bengals. They're pretty good. Good come from behind win against the Dolphins. You got to take care of the inferior opponents. Big one this week against the Steelers. Number 5 is the Carolina Panthers. Probably should have lost to the Giants, but the refs gave them that win, let's be honest. Or else Ron Rivera is getting a lot of heat right now from the media. Number 4 is the New England Patriots. They are back, folks. They are. I'm not sold on their defense, though, but Tom Brady's back. That offense is back. And this team is poised to go on a run. Number 3 is the New Orleans Saints. They are, to me, the obvious number 3 team in the league. You could argue that they're the second best team in the league if you don't believe in the Chiefs' defense. The Chiefs are number 2. Another great win for them. Their biggest test of the year and the biggest start of Patrick Mahomes' life is on Sunday night in New England. And number 1 is the Los Angeles Rams. Who's going to dethrone them is the question. They could have been dethroned if Seattle held on. Number 1 would be the Chiefs or the Saints right now if Seattle pulled off that upset. But my thinking is that the Rams took Seattle for granted, and they got to take care of business against the Broncos next week. That's it for the power rankings, and now I'm going to guess the lines for week 6 of the season. First up is Philadelphia at the Giants. I have Philadelphia minus 3.5 at MetLife Stadium against the Giants. And Philadelphia is a 3-point favorite at MetLife Stadium on Thursday night. So half point off. Buccaneers at the Falcons. I have the Falcons minus 5.5. And the Falcons are favored by 3.5. So Vegas obviously doesn't believe in either of these teams, per se. Steelers at the Bengals. I have the Cincinnati Bengals as a 3-point favorite, and they're favored by 2.5. The Chargers at the Browns. I have the Chargers minus 3 in Cleveland, and the Chargers are minus 1 at the Browns. So 2 points off there. I guess Vegas is believing in the Browns a little bit. The Seahawks at the Raiders. I have the Seahawks as a 3.5-point favorite. I was going to guess a pick'em, but I think that Vegas is buying in on the Seahawks a little bit. And Seattle's giving 3, so I was a half point off there. The Bears at the Dolphins. I have the Bears minus 3.5, and it's Bears minus 3. The Cardinals at the Vikings. I have the Vikings minus 10.5 at home, and that's what they're giving. Colts at the Jets. I have the Jets minus 3 at home, and the Jets are giving 2.5. Panthers at the Redskins. I have Carolina as a 2-point favorite in D.C. And Washington's laying 1. So that's interesting. Because the Redskins looked like garbage last night on both ends of the ball. The Bills at the Texans. I have the Texans minus 7.5 at home against the Bills. And the Texans are laying 8.5. So I was at 1 point off. Rams at the Broncos. I have the Rams minus 7 in Denver. And that's what the line is. Jaguars at the Cowboys. I have Jaguars minus 1 in Jerry World. Jaguars are laying 3. Wow. Who would have thunk that Blake Bortles would be giving points in Cowboys Stadium? Who would have thunk it? Says a lot about the Cowboys. Ravens at the Titans. I have the Ravens as a 2-point choice at Tennessee. And the Ravens are giving 3. So I was 1 point off there. And then the Chiefs at the Patriots. Sunday Night Football on NBC, which I think is the game of the year so far. I have the Patriots as a 3.5-point favorite at home against the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs, and that's exactly what the line is. And then Monday night, you have the 49ers at the Packers, which is a terrible game. I have Green Bay minus 10, and Green Bay's only laying 9.5, so I was a half point off there. That's it for the podcast today. I'll be back tomorrow recapping the Yankees and the Red Sox Game 4. I'll be going over my NBA coach rankings. I'll be going over some hockey too, doing hockey power rankings tomorrow. And I'll go over anything else that happens in the world of sports. I hope you guys have a great day, everybody.